Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be diving in.
Today we're opening up a subject that's, well, profoundly difficult and critical. It's about that devastating point where chronic pain from a work injury intersects with, frankly, bureaucratic failure in the federal system.
Yeah, we're talking about the OWCP, the Office of Workers' Compensation Programs.
Exactly. And we're exploring the life or death stakes involved in actually getting a claim approved.
It sounds dramatic, but it really can be.
It really can. Our focus today is on this agonizing story, really, of a dedicated postal worker. His death kind of exposed these fatal flaws in how the system addresses injury-related despair.
A tragic case.
So our mission here is to try and understand how unrelenting work-related pain can spiral into something like suicide.
And critically, why the federal system often defaults to denying these kinds of death claims.
Right, and what specific, specialized expertise is absolutely necessary to make sure justice is served and maybe even prevent these outcomes.
And the tragic heart of this, as you mentioned, is this 48-year-old postal worker. He was just overwhelmed by pain directly linked to his job.
Years of it.
Years. And he eventually took his own life. Then, when his grieving widow filed a claim for death benefits, seeking basic financial security after losing her husband.
But support she should expect, yeah.
That claim was immediately denied by OWCP.
Immediately denied?
Yep. The agency essentially argued that, his suicide wasn't a direct result of his work injury. They tried to break that chain.
Okay, let's start with the man suffering then, because his story really illustrates what chronic injury means.
It does.
He developed severe bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome, both hands, from years of delivering mail. Needed surgery.
Right. Standard procedure for severe cases.
But instead of relief, the pain after surgery, especially in his right hand, it became intractable. It just wouldn't stop.
And looking at the medical records, it's heartbreaking. This wasn't just, muscle strain. His actual finger bones were physically deteriorating.
Wow. Physically deteriorating.
Yeah. So to cope with that level of just relentless agony, he was put on high doses of opioid painkillers for years.
Which inevitably leads to dependence.
Exactly. A medically induced dependence. It wasn't abuse. It was prescribed treatment.
And this is where the crisis really peaked, isn't it? The tragedy happened during this awful period when doctors were trying to wean him off those strong opioids.
Right. As the medication tapered, the physical pain just flared up viciously. His widow later said he was in more agony than ever.
Oh, God.
He was frantic, desperately searching for any medical help, anything to relieve that pain, right before he reached that point of no return.
So the link seems so direct, right? The work injury, the chronic pain, the necessary opioid treatment, the agony during weaning, leading to despair.
You'd think so, but OWCP responded with a very clinical, technical denial.
Okay. What was the official reason?
They cited the lack of an unbroken chain of causation. That's the legal standard they use. They had to see a direct, uninterrupted line from the work injury to the death.
And they argued external factors broke that chain.
Precisely. They pointed to his complicated personal and medical history, stuff from decades of records.
Okay, like what specifically? What did they pull out to justify breaking that chain?
Well, they noted his opiate dependence, which is ironic since it stemmed from the treatment.
Right.
The possible effects of withdrawal, the fact that he was legally intoxicated from alcohol at the time of death, a past history of depression, a family history of mental health issues, and even some mentions of childhood trauma and relationship problems.
So they pulled everything else out.
They basically took the stance that these outside forces were the main independent causes and that disconnected the work-related pain from the suicide.
Okay. So given that complexity, which, let's be honest, most people dealing with this level of chronic pain have complex lives and histories.
Absolutely. Pain affects everything.
How did the higher court, the Employees Compensation Appeals Board, ECKB, how did they handle that? Did they just accept OWCP's argument?
No, and this is where that appeal process becomes so critical. When ECKB reviewed the case, because they're the higher court for these federal workers' comp appeals, they found OWCP's flat denial really questionable.
Okay.
They determined the case was, in their words, not in posture for decision, which basically means OWCP hadn't done its job investigating the medical evidence properly.
So they didn't just toss the claim because his life was complicated. They pushed back.
They pushed back hard, and they highlighted a key factor OWCP seemed to ignore. Chronic pain itself, especially intractable pain like his, is a known major suicide risk factor.
That's established medical knowledge.
It is. But even more critically, ECF noted the opioid dependence itself. OWCP listed it as a reason to deny, but ECAB saw it as a factor contributing to his psychological state.
Because the dependence was a direct result of treating the accepted work injury.
Exactly. It wasn't separate. It was part of the injury's consequence, so ECAB sent the case back down.
What did they order OWCP to do?
They demanded a clarifying medical opinion, and they were very specific. The doctor needed to be asked directly, did the workers accepted employment-related conditions?
Including the carpal tunnel, the pain?
Yes, and explicitly including the long-term opioid use and the effects of weaning off in. Did those things cause or contribute to the depression and anxiety that ultimately led to the suicide?
Ah, so connecting the treatment back to the original injury's impact.
Precisely. If that causal link is established, if the drug dependence that grew out of necessary treatment is seen as part of the injury's fallout.
Then the death becomes compensable under the law.
Right. Viewed as resulting from a loss of sound judgment or an irresistible compulsion directly tied back to the work injury and its treatment.
Okay. The postal worker story is just heartbreaking, but sadly you hear echoes of this. It's not unique, is it? What do broader stats show us?
No, it's definitely not unique, and the statistics are frankly terrifying. They should change how everyone views serious work injuries.
Okay, let's hear them.
Data from the American Journal of Industrial Medicine shows that men who suffer serious work injuries are 72% more likely to die by suicide compared to their uninjured peers.
72%, wow.
And for women, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Women with serious work injuries are 92% more likely to die by suicide.
92%. That's nearly double the risk.
It's a massive increase. And then you factor in the consequences we've been talking about. The medication dependency, the financial ruin, the emotional stress the system itself creates.
Yeah.
The risk profile just explodes. The risk of a drug-related death, often from pain meds getting out of control, is 29% higher for injured men. Okay, that's significant.
But for women?
For seriously injured women, the risk of drug-related death skyrockets to an astonishing 193% higher.
193% higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nearly 3 times the risk compared to uninjured women.
Those numbers, especially that 193%, I mean, that should fundamentally change how employers, doctors, everyone approaches chronic pain management after a work injury.
It really should. We're not just talking about administrative errors or delays here. These system failures translate directly into mortality statistics. It's life and death.
Is this pattern seen outside the federal system too?
Absolutely. We see similar dynamics in private insurance cases as well. There was a well-known case in Massachusetts involving a drywall worker.
Okay.
He suffered a really severe hand injury. Led to chronic pain, deep depression.
Yeah.
He lost his ability to work, his whole sense of identity.
The same spiral.
The same spiral. And then his private insurer cut off his benefits. They claimed his psychological issues, his depression, were unrelated to the physical hand injury.
Ah, trying to break the chain again.
Exactly the same tactic.
Yeah.
He died by suicide shortly after. But the appeals court there eventually saw through it.
They did.
Yeah, they ruled in the widow's favor. They found a direct, unbroken causal relationship between the initial injury, the depression that followed, the financial distress from losing benefits, and the final tragedy.
So the principle holds across systems. The downstream consequences are linked if you follow the chain logically.
When courts or boards look closely, yes.
Okay, so we've established the pain, the dependence, the stress are all linked back to the job injury, but we keep seeing the federal OWCP system specifically failing to connect those dots easily. You mentioned ECAB said the system is supposed to be non-adversarial.
That's the intent of the law, yes.
But the reality sounds incredibly adversarial. Why does OWCP make injured workers feel like they need to be expert legal fighters just to get a claim accepted in the first place?
Well, a big part of it comes down to complexity and, crucially, documentation. The Federal Employees Compensation Act, the law governing OWCP, has this completely unique set of rules, procedures, forms.
Right, you mentioned the forms earlier, CA1, CA2.
Exactly. CA1 for traumatic injuries, CA2 for occupational diseases like carpal tunnel, CA7 for wage loss, CA17 for duty status. It's an alphabet soup.
And most doctors just don't know this system.
Not at all. Your average family doctor or even an urgent care clinic physician, they might be fantastic at treating the injury itself, but they have likely zero experience with OWCP's specific requirements. They just don't deal with it daily.
So they're lost in the paperwork maze.
Completely. And this leads directly to the #1 reason claims get denied: lack of adequate medical documentation to support causation.
That specific link again?
That specific link. The OWCP system requires an explicit, rationalized medical opinion from the doctor. They can't just diagnose the condition. They must state clearly in their medical opinion that the diagnosed condition is directly caused by the specific work incident or the ongoing work duties.
And they need to explain how.
Yes, they need to detail the mechanism of injury or exposure. It needs to be a clear narrative.
So let's take that example. A federal worker lifts a heavy mail bag, feels a pop in their back, goes to a general urgent care. The notes might just say, patient diagnosed with back strain. Maybe they get a prescription. But there's no specific story written down connecting that strain 100% to lifting that mail bag at that time, documented on the correct OWCP form, like a CA1.
And that's the exact point of failure.
Right.
OWCP gets those incomplete notes maybe on the wrong form or no form.
Yeah.
They look at it and say, the burden of proof hasn't been met. Claim denied.
And once that denial happens, the spiral starts.
That's it. The worker loses access to authorized medical treatment, so the condition probably gets worse. They're likely losing wages, so financial stress skyrockets. Mental health suffers under that pressure.
And you end up right back where we started, potentially facing that same tragic outcome.
Exactly. That initial denial, often over paperwork, can be the first step in a devastating chain reaction.
Okay, so preventing that spiral really hinges on getting it right from the start with specialized expertise. What are the specific, non-negotiable steps these expert OWCP providers take? How do they establish that vital chain of causation firmly from day one?
Well, fundamentally, they treat the paperwork with the same seriousness as they treat the patient's medical condition.
Okay, step one.
Step 1. Accurately complete and file all the necessary OWCP forms. Not just the initial injury report, the CA1, CA2, but also the critical ongoing forms.
Like the CA17 you mentioned.
Yes, the CA17 duty status report, which tells the employer what the worker can and can't do. And crucially, the CA7 claim for compensation, which is how the worker actually gets paid for lost wages or files for a schedule award later. These need to be timely and accurate.
The administrative load alone sounds immense.
It is, and it's ongoing. Second, their doctors provide that required clear medical causation. It's built into their process.
So no vague language?
No vague language. Detailed, explicit narrative reports providing rationalized medical opinions, stating unequivocally that the condition is directly linked to the work incident or exposure. They aim to preempt the denial before it even happens by providing exactly what OWCP needs.
Got it. What else?
Beyond that initial claim acceptance, they handle all the required follow-up. Correspondence with the Department of Labor, ensuring treatment authorizations are in place to prevent delays or surprise bills for the patient.
So coordinating care properly.
Right. And assisting with complex issues like schedule awards.
Remind us what those are again.
A schedule award is compensation for permanent impairment to certain body parts, like loss of function in an injured hand, like the postal worker had.
Right.
It's a specific benefit under the law.
Okay.
If those aren't pursued correctly, with the right impairment ratings and documentation, the worker can lose out on potentially significant compensation they're legally entitled to.
Okay, so meticulous paperwork, clear causation, ongoing management, and finally, circling back to the postal workers case, this expertise has to include fighting denials, right? An expert provider can't just give up if OWCP says no initially.
Absolutely not. That's maybe the most critical part. An initial denial, especially in a complex case, should almost be expected sometimes. It's a procedural hurdle, not necessarily the final word.
So they need the stamina for appeals.
They must be prepared to fight through the OWCP appeal process, reconsideration requests, formal hearings before an OWCP hearing representative, and if necessary, appealing up to ISOC, like in the postal workers case.
And that means more work.
Yes. It means gathering additional evidence, providing clarifying medical opinions, sometimes arranging for second opinions from specialists, or commissioning further tests, whatever it takes to build the case until it's accepted. They have to be relentless advocates.
It sounds like the appeal in the postal workers case really forced the system to do what it was supposed to do all along.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It forced OWCP to fulfill its duty, which, again, Isagi pointed out, is supposed to be non-adversarial. The duty to fully develop the evidence, consider all aspects, and seek justice, rather than just finding the easiest reason to deny a complicated claim.
So, pulling all this together, the complexity, the bureaucracy, the tragic potential, what is the single most important takeaway for a federal worker listening right now? If they get hurt on the job, what's the one thing they absolutely must do?
It's sobering, but you said it earlier. The stakes are genuinely human lives, not just claims files and paperwork.
Don't gamble.
Don't gamble with your health, your finances, your future. Do not just go to any doctor or clinic. You absolutely must seek out providers who have proven specific expertise in the OWCP system from the very moment you get injured.
Find that specialized help immediately.
Immediately. It can make all the difference.
And maybe this leaves us with a final thought, a question to really ponder.
Yeah, I think it does. If that original work injury leads to chronic pain, and that pain leads to necessary opioid treatment, and that treatment leads to dependence, and the whole struggle against the pain and the system contributes to despair and ultimately suicide. Doesn't that make the initial work injury and the chain of events it set off the true root cause of the tragedy, regardless of whatever other complex personal history someone might have?
It forces you to reconsider that unbroken chain concept, doesn't it?
It really does. We have to look past the forms, past the bureaucratic hurdles, and always see the human being caught in that chain of causation. That's something we should never lose sight of.